Ohayou gozaimasu. Good morning. Is it coming through okay?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Okay, great. It's such an honor to be here this morning with you all in the way that we can be together. Zenshuji has been a very important part of my life since I moved back from Japan about 20 years ago, often there for various meetings, and so many of my friends and mentors are there or connected to Zenshuji. So it's quite an honor to be here today, even if it's through this kind of cyborg technology. Stefan, is there a way to have me not on the monitor facing me? On the monitor, I could see myself, and it's quite intimidating actually to look right into yourself and speak. There we go. You're all back. That's much better. So at this time of Obon, in Japan, Obon happens at different times. I lived in Sendai, Japan for a long time, and in Sendai, Obon is usually in August. So during this time of year, I'm typically at my teacher's temple. Well, now my Dharma brother has taken over the appetship and helping with various ceremonies there. And so it was so heartwarming for me today to be able to be here for your Jizo-Bon ceremonies. Really remind me of my home temple in Japan. And one of the things I think is so beautiful about Obon is the kind of generosity that people share with each other, particularly with their families. Priests are very busy during Obon, so it's harder for priests and their families to have the same experience as everyone else. They're working hard to facilitate something for the whole community. But this kind of generosity that's shared within the family is so important. It's a backbone of our society, really. And so I was so happy to hear about this Jizo-Bon tradition, which is not a tradition that I'm familiar with in the area that I lived in northern Japan. At least in the temples I'm affiliated with, Jizo-Bon isn't really practiced. And so I went and I read on the Zenshuji website about Jizo-Bon, and then I also went to read a little bit about Jizo-Bon around Japan. And I think it is so beautiful, so amazing that people take the time to create a ritual which can invite children into the temple, children into the Dharma, children into the practices of making offerings in particular. Because so much of what Obon is about is making offerings to our family, particularly to our ancestors who have passed away. And when we invite children into that, we're also teaching them. We're teaching them about generosity. We're teaching them about what it means to be connected to family, connected to ancestry. At the very heart of Obon, the story which is at the formation of Obon, this generosity has to do with one of the Buddha's disciples named Mokuren. So very quickly, many of you I'm sure know the story, that Mokuren, one of the disciples of the Buddha, who was very close with his mother. After his mother passed away, he went to look for her in the other worlds. Mokuren was the foremost in special powers and kind of mystical powers. And so he was able to travel through the various realms and look for his mother. He found her in the realm of the hungry ghosts. And he was quite distraught. He went to the Buddha and he asked the Buddha what he should do. And the Buddha said, make an offering. Practice generosity. Right? Bring your resources to the temple and share them with the Sangha. Share them with the beings who are working hard to make a better world, to make enlightenment true for everyone. And so Mokuren did this. And his mother was freed from the realm of the hungry ghost, and he danced with joy. Right? So this is where we get Bon Odori, all the way back to the Buddha. His disciple Mokuren was so happy that his mother was liberated, and so he danced. With Ojizo-sama, there's something that's very connected to this story. For those of you who have traveled to Japan or there at Zenshuji, you have your Jizos right there at the temple outside. So you're walking by them all the time. In Japan, you can't hardly walk down a road without there being a statue of Jizo somewhere along the way. It's really encouraging. Jizo is so close to us, always there in the street, not only in the temple hall. In my own life, I had this experience when I was living in Japan that the Jizo was maybe my first teacher, or maybe the first Buddha that was really helping me. I was living in Japan and my grandfather passed away suddenly, and I didn't know what to do. Far away from family, really sad. But there was a Jizo statue outside the temple, much like there at Zenshuji. And so I went there and I burned incense, and I could feel closer to my grandfather. When I was on pilgrimage in Shikoku, we made a vow, my walking partner and I, we made a vow that every statue that we would walk past of Jizo, we would turn and we would bow to the Jizo and keep walking. And after about 3 days of walking, we wished we had not made that vow, because there's so many Jizos. You're walking, you have to turn and bow, sometimes there'll be 100 or 200, all the way up the side of a hill. So it was very good practice. And then when my wife was pregnant with our first daughter, again, I knew Jizo was the protector of children, and so I found a Jizo, offered incense. And then several years ago, when our youngest daughter Satsuki passed away, Jizo was there, is there on her altar. And so I feel very close to Ojizo-sama. So when I was looking more deeply into the origins of Jizo and thinking about Obon, I found something very interesting. In the Jizo Sutra, the Sutra of the Bodhisattva Kshitigarbha's fundamental vow, that's the full name. This is the sutra that speaks about Jizo, is where Jizo the origins of Jizo are explained. There's a very interesting story that's very similar to the Obon story, and I think it's an important story for us to know as we encounter Jizo and have Jizo in our life as such a support. So in this sutra, the Buddha is in the heavens. He's traveled there to teach the Dharma to his mother. That's a very important point. The Buddha travels to the heavens where his mother is residing after she passed away, and he's teaching her the Dharma. And there's a great assembly that gathers around the Buddha. All the Buddhas of the many, many rounds, the Bodhisattvas, of course they're there. But then all types of beings from the world of suffering, all types of spirits and gods and demons and centaurs and serpent kings, all of this great assembly of beings comes together there in the heavens to hear the Buddha teach. And he tells the story of a girl, of a Brahmin girl from ages ago. And this girl was said to be just a wonderful person. She was admired by everyone around her and was protected by various spirits and bodhisattvas. But her mother was coarse. She was difficult. And sometimes this girl was able to be kind to her mother in such a way that her mother would start to soften up, but she would always slide back into a kind of meanness. And so their life together went on that way. And eventually the mother passed away. And her daughter was very distraught. And she went to the temples, to the stupa, and she made great offerings. And she burned incense, and she mourned deeply for her mother. She mourned for her because of her loss, but she was also worried about her. She was worried about her next incarnation. She knew about her mother's difficulty. And so she prayed. She prayed to know what has become of my mother. And as she prayed, it said that the Buddha spoke to her. And he said, because you cherish your mother, I will teach you how it is that you can find her. And he taught the girl how to sit quietly and how to contemplate the Buddha. He said, go home and practice this, and you'll be able to find your mother. You'll be able to see where she is. And so the girl went back to her home. She sat quietly and she took up the practice that the Buddha had recommended. And the sutra says that after one day and one night, she arrives at a very mysterious place, a mysterious and horrible place. It's an ocean, and the whole ocean is boiling. And there are iron beasts that are flying through the air, and they're fetching beings out of the boiling sea, and they're ripping them apart and they're devouring them. There's yashas that are flying through the air with fire spitting from their head, gathering these various beings together to be tormented. But the sutra makes a point of saying that the girl isn't frightened. She stays there. She doesn't run away. And she looks into this realm. And a demon king named Vedana, he comes before the girl, he prostrates to her, he puts his hands together, and he addresses her as a bodhisattva. He says, "Why have you come here, bodhisattva?" And the girl says, "What is this place? What is all this suffering? What's happening?" And the demon king Vedana explains to her that this is a karmic sea of innumerable hells, that beings who are stingy, beings who are problematic, who accrued great negative karma in their life, they're reborn here in this hell, and they experience these torments, and that these realms of hell go on and on and on throughout many lands. And the girl asks the demon king, he says, "My mother died, but I don't know where she is. I don't know where her spirit has traveled to. I'm afraid that she may be here." And so the demon king asks her, he says, "What is your mother's name?" And she tells him, Yue Ti Li is her name. And he says, "Oh, don't worry. Don't be sorrowful. 3 days have passed since she has left this place and ascended into the heavens, reborn into a heavenly realm. And this was due to the offerings made by her daughter, by you. The offerings that you made released her. The good karma from your life, from you dedicating it to her, has released her from these hells. And not only that, but all the beings that were in this hell at the same time as her, all of them were released and reborn into the heavens at the same time." It said that the girl then woke up as if she'd been in a dream, and she made a great vow to provide a means for liberation for all suffering beings. She saw the truth of her mother's welfare being completely tied to the welfare of all these beings who are suffering. And then the Buddha says to the assembly that this demon king, Yadana, he later became the jeweled lead bodhisattva, which is a bodhisattva that shows up in an important sutra called the Avatamsaka Sutra. And the girl is Kshitagarbha Bodhisattva, O Jizo-sama. This was the origin of her vow to save all beings, particularly beings that are traveling through hell. I really, although this story is challenging, we're not typically so fond of stories that talk about hell. I think that this story is amazing. It's really important. The connection between the Buddha and his mother, the connection between this daughter and her mother, how important our family bonds are, but that our family bonds can lead us beyond the confines of family. That a care and devotion to our family and ancestors goes beyond our family and ancestors. It leads us to this ocean of all beings that are suffering. I don't know how you experience it, but my experience is that we humans are difficult. We are all difficult. It's not just this young woman's mother who is difficult. Everyone is difficult. I was watching a short documentary on Obon. I was missing being able to be in Japan for Obon, so I was watching a documentary, and there was a section of the documentary about a woman who had lost her husband a number of years back. He was a fisherman in Kyushu. And they were interviewing her as they were going through the various rites of Obon. And at one point they asked her, they say, Danna-sama no seikaku wa? What was the character of your husband? And she paused, and she was very quiet. She kind of did this a little bit because she knew this was going to be public, right? But she couldn't think what to say, how she could say it. There was a long pause, and finally, with just one word, she said, ganko. Stubborn. He was stubborn. Difficult. And you have her care for him as he passed into these next lives. The offerings that she makes each year, the light which she lights to call him back, and the light she lights to send him back off. She had been doing that now for many, many years. We're all difficult. We're all ganko. We're all stubborn in our own way. But Jizo meets us. He meets us the way that a daughter meets her parents, caring for her mother's well-being. And Jizo goes on to care for the world. So for me, when I put my hands together and make offering of incense to Ojizo-sama, and I think back through my life and all of these moments that have been punctuated by this wonderful Bodhisattva's presence, I think about my family, my biological family. I think about my family in the Dharma, and I think about my family of humanity and of the earth. And I would encourage you to do the same. Let that care extend out. The world is certainly in need of it now, perhaps more than ever. Mm.